So I brought you guys into my kitchen this evening to show you what I consider to be a fairly easy meal that I make all the time. And it's easy because I've set it up to be that way from the start. It is actually very intense if you look at all of the prep work that goes into it. It's like meal planning, but like way far in advance and doing that from the garden. So this is going to be my pesto pasta recipe. And the pesto, of course, started all the way from last February when I sowed the seeds for the basil. And if you think about it like that, it's kind of intense. But, you know, over the summer, I made a whole bunch of pesto and I froze it into these cubes, which I can now just take out and plop in the microwave, boil some pasta, and then when I'm feeling fancy, I can chop up some of my sun-dried tomatoes from the summer, and voila, a very healthy, very easy meal. And part of why I'm showing you this is because I think that stuff like this is why I've been so successful with using my produce in the garden. I have worked a lot of these things into my schedule and into my habits so that I can have these high effort sort of garden meals kind of on a consistent basis. That defrosted way quicker than I thought it was going to. But, so we've got our pesto, and I'm just going to chop up some of my sun-dried tomatoes here. And these are going to be cold, straight into the bowl. So part of the reason that I think it's important to talk about this is because I know sometimes it's easy to imagine that all the meals you eat out of your garden have to be this like beautiful, high effort cooking adventure. And it really does not have to be that way. It can be just as easy as pulling something out of your freezer and heating it up. I definitely have even easier meals than this. The Ivar that you guys hear me talk about all the time, that is cubed up the same way as the pesto. And again, I just defrost that and I throw some frozen naan in the toaster. And that sometimes is a whole meal for me, you know, if that's all I have the energy for. Sometimes that's what it's got to be. And it's still very nutritious when I can do that because of all of the work that I put in over the summer into that Ivar sauce. Is just, it's still there when I heat it back up. I didn't have to do this in the middle of summer to get the full benefit of it. And I think it's really good to keep in mind, you know, that things like this are an option. I've been thinking a lot about burnout and about burning out on gardening. And so I think a lot of the advice you're going to be getting from me over the next few weeks is going to be kind of focused on how to avoid burnout in the garden, because even right now where I haven't even really started gardening for the year, I'm already looking ahead at everything I have to do and feeling like pre-burnt out about it, because it can be really daunting to like think about all these different things that have to be done. And I think about how I felt burnt out in the middle of the summer in the past. And it can be a lot. And so just remembering the easy things that I can do that are still technically gardening and garden related, it just reminds me not everything has to be all that high effort and all that hard. So it is just a little bit chilly out today, but mostly it's been a lot warmer than it normally feels like it should be. And every year it's like, oh, it's unseasonably warm, but really this is normal. We do go through a false spring pretty much every year, and I always worry, are the plants going to get confused? Because sometimes it feels more extreme than it really needs to. But definitely We are still in the middle of winter, and we're getting winter temperatures even later this week. I think we're getting down to 19 degrees in like 2 days. But for now, the plants really do seem to be waking up. There is a lot of green out here, and most of it is weeds, but there's definitely some new stuff to see. The potato onions that I've been waiting so patiently on have finally started sprouting, which is exciting. I was just a little bit worried about them, but we do have our little onion tops now, and I'm not worried about these if it gets cold again. Onions are very cold hardy. All of the garlics that are around the garden are also looking excellent right now. They've gone through pretty much every temperature swing you can imagine and shown almost no stress from it. Garlic is just so easy that way. My annual onion starts, which you can see right here, these have been struggling just a little bit more with the cold, but as you can see, we've got new baby leaf coming on right there, and that is a really good sign that these guys are actually probably going to pull through and be okay. They haven't grown just a whole lot since I've put them in, but I imagine they're spending most of their time getting their roots all settled. Cabbages are still looking absolutely excellent and are still ever so slowly forming heads for me, so that's really exciting. I would say Brussels sprouts not doing quite as well. These look a little sad, a little stunted. We do have little tiny sprouts on them. You can see them just coming in under there. But overall, these plants do not look as healthy as the cabbages do, that's for sure. You can see the tips of these leaves up here definitely dealing with some damage. And that looks like cold damage to me. That doesn't look like any sort of pest. It just looks like it's not handling the cold quite as well as the cabbages are. You would be hard-pressed to find any cold damage on these leaves. The feverfew here at the back is actually been putting on some new growth with the warmth. You can kind of see the remnants here of some of the stuff that died back in the cold. But this is looking pretty hardy. I think we will see just a ton of growth from it over the summer. I haven't seen any evidence of my Egyptian walking onions coming up yet, but it might still be just a little too early for them. And also, with the way the weeds are, they're gonna have to get pretty big before I notice them. This is honestly the weediest I think I've ever let my garden get since I started it. Things have just kind of gotten out of hand, and I'm kind of experimenting with, okay, which weeds can I leave and which ones absolutely have to go. I'm kind of operating under a grass shall not be suffered to live mentality, and everything else is like generally okay. The soil needs covering, and these plants, a lot of them are edible and even medicinal. We'll see if it becomes a problem in the long term, but right now I'm really just happy to take the easy way out. Plus, these plants actually are doing work for me while they're here. I know you've heard me say it before, but dandelion is a calcium pump. All of these leaves are super high in calcium that its big taproot is pulling up from way lower than most plants' roots are going to get. And so having it here is actually kind of helping fertilize my soil for the coming year. The cold has not been kind, though. You can see my poor little oregano. You see that little bit? That's all that's left green of it. And it's about to get kind of cold again. But the fact that I do see this green on it means when it actually warms up for real, this plant will probably be okay. The yarrow is also already coming back. All these cute little fronds poking up through the mulch. You can see just how much of it died back. There's this big sticky mess of dead whatever here. I also noticed my garlic chives are starting to come back, pushing through my mulch here. And these also should be able to handle the cold temperatures that are still coming. So I'm also not just super worried about this coming up too early.
Over in the berry patch, it's also about time to start looking for evidence of strawberries coming back. And I was actually sorting through here and found this guy underneath the mulch, already looking super green. And you can see right here, new leaf being made. So that's exciting. We are hopefully going to have good strawberries this year. A lot of them died back last year in the middle of summer during the drought. But these things are hardy, and I'm sure that they will take over again very soon. An upsetting but interesting development is that my rosemary actually is looking not good. This thing seemed like nothing could bother it, and now it seems like a good portion of it was frost damaged. You can see maybe down here where it was a little more protected that this is still green, but also right next to it, I mean, all of this is just brown and dead, and that's surprising. I have not really seen rosemary take damage like this. It's hard to say what exactly killed it, but I guess even the rosemary is not invincible. I'm also 90% sure that my kumquat is actually finally fully dead. I see no more green leaves on it, and the stems are starting to turn brown instead of having that healthy kind of green color to them. So I guess my citrus experiment was a little bit of a failure, but we always knew that it was going to be right on the edge of working. The warmer temperatures and all the rain that we had seems to have triggered fruiting in one of my older logs. This is the only one that has actually given me any shiitake so far. And it looks like this is maybe a couple of days old already. It's already been munched on and it's feeling a little dry. But we did have 2 or 3 days in a row of just absolutely massive amounts of steady rain. And so that's probably what set this off. As we get into true spring, there's going to be a lot more stuff to see coming back. I actually have more perennials in the garden this year than I ever have. And so the garden really is going to just start coming alive as soon as things start warming up. And that is so exciting and also a little nerve-wracking because you're never quite sure if it's for sure going to come back.